Ultimately, I've come to a conclusion regarding all the drugs currently in phases of trial, respectively, for treating this novel outbreak of this age-old virus. I've read hundreds of pages of medical reports and trial reports in various stages around the world, and they're very impressive. But one thing that stands out is the fact that, yes, when it comes to quinine, or the base derivative used in chloroquine, we still see the history of this drug that goes back more than 5 decades. But sadly, one small amount of overdose can be deadly, and it can affect and mutate certain RNA markers affecting the blood based on specific genetic inheritances. But unfortunately, it's one of those drugs from bark, like willow or cinnamon or aspirin, that remains a medical mystery. I'll link you to a great medical video that I believe will explain all you need to know about the biomarkers of how chloroquine and its more hydrophilic version, hydroxychloroquine, works in the body. It's an excellent video, and I recommend that you take the time to watch it. It's about 15 minutes. Well, I believe that hydroxychloroquine was taken off the market to self-treat because of such permanent side effects. I mean, there's nothing more permanent than death, right? I still don't believe that it should have been taken out of the possible medical toolbox for prescribers. And doctors should not have been fired for speaking out about pulling it from hospitals. We see medical and pharmaceutical lawsuits all the time. Class action suits against drug companies for not fully warning or testing their medications. These synthetic concoctions have severe effects on human tissue. Some of them are caustic. And I don't believe that any drug trial should be fast-tracked, especially one for human treatment en masse. So what's the real reason I believe this medication was banned, despite giving it to patients to treat lupus, arthritis, and other immune diseases? Well, let's go take a look at the money trail for a second. Hydroxychloroquine is manufactured by multiple companies. There's really not much competition, and it's relatively affordable, less than $20. Now, keep in mind, I'm not advocating to self-treat, rather just simply demonstrating affordability. You should never self-dose, and if you are sick, you should seek good medical advice. But coupled with the zinc being given for absorption here, which is about $3 a bottle, it's really no more than the cost of your visit and these relatively inexpensive drugs. Even the generic version of hydroxychloroquine, which is Plaquenil, well, we see coupons all over the internet for that, okay? And it renders the treatment, again, less than $20. So in essence, you should be treated and on your road to recovery for the cost of your visit and about $25 for your meds, okay? That's without a copay. All right, now let's take a look at the emergency-approved fast-track to human trial drug, Remdesivir. This drug, manufactured by Gilead Sciences, will cost $390 a vial for a 5-day regimen, and you're going to need 6 vials of it. It was originally created about 4 years ago to be an Ebola treatment, but it didn't work so well. All right, anyway, 6 vials of Remdesivir you'll need. That's $2,340 per patient. With the first 2 million spoken for, that's already $5 billion in revenue. So imagine how much they could stand to make in profit if they produce a regimen dosage for most Americans. Well, let's just round it down to 300 million Americans because not everyone's going to use the treatment. And at $2,340 per patient, that's more than $700 billion. So who gains? Well, first of all, the biggest shareholder of this biopharmaceutical giant is the Vanguard Group, a global investment firm boasting 193 indexed and managed American funds and 233 foreign investor funds, totaling over $6 trillion in assets under management. They control 8.04% of Gilead Sciences with more than $100 million in equities. That's 100,848,581 at last count. Now, please bear in mind that Gilead brings you drugs for everything from HIV to erectile dysfunction. They make a lot of money. Capital Research and Management Global and Capital Research Management, respectively, have a combined ownership at 7.65% and 5.16%, respectively, totaling combined shares of 160,762,319 equities. We also find Putnam LLC, that's a limited liability corporation, which is another investment firm. Now, this one actually is interesting because they sold for $3.9 billion to Great West Life Company, a subsidiary of Power Financial Corporation, which manages global portfolio investments to the tune of $1,900 billion just last year alone. So why investment firms? Well, they need big money backing big promises, and that's just it. Gilead plans on selling the 5-day treatment at $2,340, down from the initially proposed cost of $3,480 per person. Currently, they're subcontracting, working with 5 additional agencies to manufacture drugs for mass distribution. Keep in mind, it's still in trial, but it's being fast-tracked by the same companies who stand to gain. Now it's in phase 3, but it's really kind of played leapfrog over dozens of other trials that are still actively working through phase 1 and phase 2. So why not get another couple $1,000s per person while they're waiting for us to pay out the hiney for the vaccination, if and when that is ever created? All right, we find a few more investment firms as shareholders. SSGA Funds Management, which is the largest Asian market investment firm, interesting, as well as Geode Capital Management, another global asset research group, and Northern Trust Investments, which boasts their trade as Wealth Management Services. They're all key players, but I saved the best for last. So BlackRock Fund Advisors has more than 31.5 million equity shares in the corporation, admitting 10.7% CFR ownership of this company. So who stands to benefit from this? The answer is very clear. It's the same elitists we knew that benefited all along. So my advice, don't take a drug that's not tested. Don't end up being a member of a class action lawsuit. Some drug trials are concluded after as little as 2 to 4 days. So what happens if it takes a full week to kill you? Seriously, if you want to know more about BlackRock, go look at the division of the company in the mid-90s. In fact, I mentioned them in the Bill Clinton section of the Architects of the New World Order video when they divided from Blackstone. They're associated with weapons and all kinds of other shady practices. Anyway, Gilead manufactures chemicals for us to take. It's funded and owned by some very large, very nefarious global corporations and firms. And they hide the true identities behind some of the most corruptly evil people on the planet to protect them from being sued. You can't sue a corporation like you can a person. These are people like George Soros, and it's been proven that he owns a portion of Gilead. He has stock in the company. Okay, Bill Gates, Larry Fink, so many more. Also, please don't forget that there's never been a vaccine that has effectively worked as an RNA modifier. There's too many variables, and it's never been done before. These trials are being rushed, and there's going to be serious consequences as a result. Not all of these 250,000 volunteers to be medical guinea pigs are going to fare as well. Earlier, I mentioned some very rich and evil men, Gates, Soros, Fink. And if you aren't aware of who Larry Fink is, he and a handful of his colleagues established BlackRock in 1988. Today, they manage over $27 trillion in global assets. And that's not including the government's $45 trillion in black funds. Shady indeed. As of today, state attorneys general are asking the government to pump up production of Remdesivir for more drugs at a lower cost. And it's a plea to make it affordable to more people. But these companies don't need to charge so much for this. They stand to make over $700 billion off prescribing it to you. So supply and demand is also going to further dictate how prices are affected, of course. But bear in mind, our government, our own government that we pay taxes to, gave a $79 million grant to Gilead to develop this drug. You know what's really bad about that? They're going to monopolize on this patent for 7 years. So with such heinous profiteering, it's really clear to see how decisions are made based solely on capital gain. Gilead Sciences Incorporated, on their homepage, their mission statement includes descriptors like biopharmaceutical company that discovers, develops, and commercializes innovative medicines in areas of unmet medical need. With each new discovery and investigational drug candidate, we seek to improve the care of patients living with life-threatening diseases around the world. Gilead's therapeutic areas of focus include HIV and AIDS, liver disease, hematology and oncology, inflammatory and respiratory diseases, and cardiovascular diseases. And it goes on and on and on. So problem, reaction, solution, right? Don't you think a company as powerfully complex and capable of creating the problem, reaction, solution scenario could be capable of just this? Creating the problem, adjusting to, if not completely psychologically controlling the narrative to create a reaction, and offer a solution at an ungodly amount of profit. Additionally, the methodologies in which we're gauging these treatments, we lock down some, but not all. We try to half-ass get rid of coronavirus. It's a sham at best. Has anyone gone out and cleaned the streets? What about the doors? I haven't seen anybody wipe off a door handle in 6 months. We're all forced in and out of the same door now at the store, side by side, ensuring that we walk about 2 feet apart. I'd rather take the other door, one in and one out, or whatever you have to do to minimize the risk by lessening the exposure. And right now, we're at 100% exposure by the way we're doing it, so it's redundant. And if you open 2 doors, then you're mitigating exposure by half, or whatever relative proportion chose to take the other door. And has anyone bothered to change their toothbrush? These are all questions that should be asked, and they're silly, I know, but one day it's do this, and then the next day it's fine, and then the restrictions are back with a vengeance, and again, it's redundant. So I believe a large portion of it is, 1, not having good hygiene. Wash your hands. It does wonders. Wash your hands. Also, not staying home when you're sick contributes to a significant portion of these cases. I mean, if you're sick, you're going to get somebody else sick, but if you're not sick, guess what? You're not going to get somebody else sick. That's the way it works. That's logic. So really, we only knew about these cases 6 months ago. Testing was inadequate, still is with all the false positives, rather inadequate. So we're seeing an exponential growth in testing capabilities now, 6 months later. So obviously and logically, it's driving up the numbers of infected cases. So let's examine over 6 months this outbreak. Simply, there's 323 million Americans, okay? Now to date, we've reported about 6 million cases. That's still just roughly 0.018% of the population. And compared to other versions of corona, including so many different various versions discovered from the 60s and onward, it's really not spread as quickly as they thought. So considering all of this, I think we really need to ask ourselves, why are we living in such great fear? We are totally altering the mental health of all Americans because of this. And really, if you're not just so overwhelmed by fear itself, a lot of people are frustrated by this, but the natural course of human emotion, frustration always left unchecked leads to anger. So knowing that asymptomatic or healthy people only have a minute chance of spreading, like being a carrier, the risk of getting any other potentially deadly infection is about the same. If you go to the emergency room and you're in there hanging out with all those nasty germs, well, your chances are going to skyrocket. Hospitals, as clean as they are, still house all those germs. It's where everyone goes to get sick, pooling all those grotesque, nasty things in one big warehouse. Now, if you're in there and you've got it and you shove a tube in your throat and you create an enclosed biome or your lungs, well, tell me how that's going to work to help you get better. So, from the beginning, I have wondered why they have not used some other form of treatment like Z-Pax or zithromycin. And ultimately, it just forces open the bronchial passageway and expels the mucus. I don't know, it's crazy times we're living in, but if you use your brain and think it out, I think we can better understand what's going on here. And by following the money trail, so very clear to see just exactly what's going on. All right, be well, wash your hands, and thanks for joining me. Have a great day, friends. Just Christina, signing out.